Good evening and welcome to the Civil Service Commission. May I have roll call, please?
Here.
Here. Gregorian.
Here.
And Devine.
Here.
And for the record, Commissioner Gazarian is absent.
Okay. May I have the first item, please?
Minutes?
Move to approve. Dispense.
Hold it. We have kind of complicated here. The first minutes we'll take are the ones for January 11th. And Mr. Manukian, you were not here for the entire session, so there are three of us here. Well, I think you need to abstain on the January 11th.
I abstain.
Okay. So we need a motion for the January 11th.
Move.
Second.
You abstain.
Okay. Let's have roll call.
Better stay out of this, guys.
Watch my finger.
Commissioner Gantis?
Yes.
Commissioner Gregorian?
Yes.
Commissioner Devine?
Yes. Okay, the next one is the minutes of October 26th.
You didn't say, Commissioner.
Forget it. He's not here
Oh,
today.
Commissioner Manukian.
He already abstained. Next one are the minutes for the meeting of October 26th, and we had to add one item in there. Mr. Doyle, could you explain what that's about, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, we're bringing back the minutes from the October 26, 2011 meeting for a reconsideration. And the reason why is that we've made one small amendment to these minutes, and it's on page 2, item number 10, where we address the open hearing. And what we've done is amended these minutes to indicate that the very last line where it says Chair Devine adjourned the hearing to January 18th, 2012. What that means is it's simply to clarify that for that particular hearing, and really every hearing we have, each session that we have is not its own hearing in and of itself. It's one long hearing, and it's adjourned and continued to the next one. And it's an important distinction that we felt was something that we needed to clarify. So if you have questions on that, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Ms. Varpetian was suggested that this is a way to go about that as well.
Okay, are there any questions? Mr.
Yes,
Gaddis.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Gaddis.
Well, so I would suggest penultimate section 10. Prior to the paragraph that says the Commission.
The hearing, opened the hearing at this time, period, and then the commission selected, and then we adjourned the hearing.
Ms. Varpetian, is that proper?
That would be adequate.
Okay. All right, with that change, is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Second.
Okay, and we'll have roll call on that.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Gazarian?
Well,
Have
I
to
did not
abstain.
get it on
You
time,
abstained.
so I'll abstain.
Okay.
Commissioner Gantis?
Yes.
Gregorian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Next item, please.
Oral communications.
I have no cards. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the commission on items not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item, please.
Eligible list established.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is a note and file item indicating the eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting, which was approximately 2 weeks ago. We do have one list that was completed during that time. That's an administrative analyst in the city manager's office. That's a promotional recruitment. It shows, as this report usually does, the total number of applications received, and then on the far right, the total number of individuals on the eligible list. That's the only list that has been established in this period of time. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? Okay, we'll have the next item.
Revised class specification for approval, lifeguard series and pool management series.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, as part of our ongoing effort to update our class specifications citywide, we have two series to bring to you tonight, the lifeguard series and the pool management series. These are both part-time positions. Technically, the term would be seasonal, as these are individuals that are hired typically for the summer aquatics programs. In fact, probably in the next couple of months, we'll be starting that hiring process. Again, when we update these specifications, we really take a closer look at the essential functions, the minimum requirements, to make sure they best meet the needs of the position as they currently exist right now. The last time these two were updated was in 2005, and that was not too long after we restarted the whole aquatics program, because it had been dormant for a while. And since that time, there have been some changes. In fact, one of the biggest ones being that we now have a pool of our own. We had been using the pools at the sort of the area high schools, but really there aren't any major changes in this specification. Just some very small adjustments addressing things like the requirement that some of the positions require the individuals to drive. There's discussion about conduct, professionalism. There's licensing issues at the various levels of lifeguard and pool manager. So with that, I'd be happy to try and answer your questions if you have any. We also have representatives from our Parks Department here today to answer those questions as well. So whatever your pleasure is.
Mr. Gregorian.
Yes. Life-saving techniques, is CPR is part of these techniques, or
Question.
or is just that's a different experience and skills and abilities which is considered to.
That is an essential requirement, I think, for all of these positions. So,
I didn't see that's the reason I asked.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm Gabrielle Golia, the Community Services Supervisor
yes.
of the Sports Section. Life-saving skills does include CPR, first aid, as well as the lifeguarding certification from the Red Cross, which includes all of the training that goes into lifeguarding a pool.
Thank you.
That's for
I'll
all.
find out in licensing
All
and
positions.
certification. Yeah. But the part of the section of the knowledge, skills, and abilities, that's the reason I couldn't find. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kazarian.
Yes, thank you. I note that the part reflecting communication effectively in English has been deleted in terms of orally and in writing. Is there a reasoning behind it, or what other measures have been taken to ensure that the person is able to communicate? In English, I assume.
Mr. Gazarian, what page are you?
I'm looking at page 2 of 5.
2 of 5.
Also, do they need to know how to swim?
It's a good question.
I can go ahead and answer that. My name is Narni Kasparian. I'm Human Resources Assistant. That's been deleted. However, if you look at the very bottom of it, says read, write, communicate effectively, and comprehend directions in English. So just kind of took that out and added a little bit more language to that.
Very well. If I may continue with a couple of more inquiries, Chair. On the page 3 of 6, where it says Lifeguard 1, I see that American Red Cross Water Safety Instructor certificate is highly desirable, and it appears that in the past it was a requirement to possess such a certificate. I'm curious as to the reasoning for
For
that.
the Lifeguard 1, I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. I'm showing that it was never required at that level. It was always been desirable at the level of the Lifeguard 1.
I see. So when it says deleted current possession of,
We just deleted that, just language cleanup. That would just
I
be,
see.
yeah, we just took that out, just saying, whatever's written here is
I see.
required. Yes.
It used to say certificate highly desired. You see the ED that's been
I
deleted.
see. I see. So what's the reasoning then for not requiring an actual possession of a certificate versus desiring one to have one?
Sure. The Water Safety Instructor Certificate is a teaching certificate, so it allows a lifeguard to teach a lesson, teach other people how to swim through the Red Cross. A Lifeguard 1 is a position, it's an entry-level position, and it's not, that certificate is not packaged with the lifeguard certificate, so we might hire a lifeguard who would simply be someone who sits on the tower and guards the water but doesn't actually get in and teach a lesson.
Fair enough. Thank you. And the last inquiry I have in this area is page 4 of 5, top of the page, under additional minimum requirements with respect to licenses and certifications. It says American Red Cross Water Safety Instructor, again, certificate at the time of appointment versus versus what was deleted as language current possession of. So is this something that at the time that the person is appointed, meaning hired, they would have to have this certificate? Yes?
At the time of application.
At the time of...
It says appointment.
No, it says appointment.
Appointment, yes.
Yes, the reason for that is that many of our high school employees are taking the class currently. The class is run in the spring through the high school, and so we anticipate that it will be finished. They have to complete it before they'll be appointed in the actual position, but we might interview them still.
I agree. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
You know, Mr. Gazarian, I'm sorry, I'm really tired. I spent the whole day in court doing nothing.
It's called the fellow Lebanese.
Fellow Lebanese, yes. I brought up a point. You know, we have a lot of people that speak a lot of different dialects and languages, and some that don't speak English. Is that part of the thought process? I know it probably can't be in the class specs, but we do keep that in mind. I mean, I would assume if there's a problem that somehow we're having ability to communicate. Is that?
We certainly do keep that in mind, and as well as having staff that can speak many languages as we're hiring. We also post all of our rules and all of our policies in 3 different languages at all of the pool sites.
That's good enough for me.
I just had one academic question.
Sure.
Do you know if your lifeguards are being taught the new CPR procedure that omits the breathing and does the chest compressions only?
Actually, the CPR for lifeguards still does include breathing and chest compressions because they're considered professional rescuers. So they're at a higher level than the entry-level like workplace CPR that you might learn or community CPR. So they are taught everything else, including the bag valves, which we wouldn't learn as lay people when we're taking the classes.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chairman Devine, also just, if I may, having been on the board of directors for the American Red Cross for a number of years, whenever it involves water, they still do the breathing to let so if there is any water within the lungs, so it'll help it come out.
Interesting.
Thank you for that. Other
I
questions?
didn't realize you had that much knowledge, Sam. I mean, go figure. Move.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Kazarian?
Yes.
Cantus?
Yes.
Gregorian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes. And the next item, please.
Class specification for approval, employee health coordinator.
Oh, did we do the pool management already?
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is the establishment of a new classification specification for a position of employee health coordinator. Unlike the previous specifications that you approved, which were revisions, this is a brand new one. We have had a major reorganization of the employee health services function here at the City of Glendale, beginning mostly in the year 2009. Some of you may recall that the city formerly had its own in-house clinic, employee health services. It was actually right across the street in an office building where we had staff, nursing staff and other staff that dealt with the pre-placement physicals and all the special exams, the wellness programs associated with our employment. Due to the need to reduce our budgets, we eliminated the in-house clinic in 2009 and essentially made the decision to contract this service with Glendale Adventist Occupational Medicine Center, which again is a Glendale-based company. Following that move, we had to reduce our staff, and we had to lay off some employees and also replace them, place them in other areas of the organization. But at that point, we were left with 2 employees handling the employee health function, an employee health administrator and a senior clerical position. Over the past 2 years, those 2 individuals, I think, have successfully transitioned our employee health program from the in-house program to the Glendale Adventist Center. We've saved lots of money and are providing a really fine level of service to the organization to ensure that our employees are, of course, meeting all the medical standards of their positions. Last month, we experienced a retirement with our health services administrator. Many of you know Monica Fisher, who's been before this commission many times. She's retired, and we're now left with one employee running the operation. With the fact that the Glendale Adventist Center is working so well, we're not going to fill that administrator position, but we would like to take the existing senior clerical position and elevate that to this position we have before you, which is an employee health coordinator. This will be a non-management position represented by GCA. And whereas Mrs. Fisher, her previous role focused more on the medical side of things, her medical opinions and judgments and such, we've mostly moved all of those decisions to the clinic, and we're left with really just a coordination of the role, making sure our employees get screened, scheduled, and if there are any special exams, the existing staff will provide the recommendations on those things. We're also attempting to maintain some semblance of a wellness program for our employees because we believe that's very important. We have obligations under the ADA, Fair Employment and Housing Act, to place disabled or work-restricted employees in other positions, and so those very important rules will continue to be handled by this one individual. And again, this item before you is the specification for that position. It's employee health coordinator. And again, upon your approval, we hope to fill this position on a promotional basis. With that, if you have any questions about the reorganization, the position itself, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Mr. Kazarian.
Yes, thank you. Did you state that this was an entry-level position working in conjunction with the sole remaining functioning individual?
No, sir. This is not an entry-level position. This is what I'm going to do is reallocate the remaining. It's a senior clerical position right now, or more of an administrative position, into this role, and eliminate the administrator position.
I see. On the employee health coordinator materials before me, page 1 of 3, towards the bottom of the page, fourth section from the bottom, it states coordinates health surveillance on regulated employee groups. What is contemplated by health surveillance?
Health surveillance is. I apologize. It's a medical term. It does not. Has nothing to do with surveilling employees.
Right. Okay.
It has to do with the employees in their job classifications who are subject to certain regulatory exams, whether that be they have to wear a respirator or they have to wear certain protective gear, that this person sort of keeps track of those classifications and who's required to possess those types of requirements and take those types of exams in order to hold their positions.
Okay. With respect to the position as it's described here on page 2 and continuing on page 3, it speaks of various areas that minimum requirements have to be met in those areas. One being knowledge of. In the section of knowledge of, one of the lines reads medical office terminology and procedures. With respect to ability to, and I have a point to my inquiry. With respect to ability to, it speaks in line 3, identify and recommend effective action to meet current and future employee health services needs for the organization and employees. And on page 3, one line says, serves as role model to employees with respect to exhibiting healthful lifestyle. I suppose I understand what that means. But the others, establish smooth working relationships and resolve in their personal conflicts, exercise judgment and discretion in problem situations, all of which I think are essential job functions, which leads me to my question. In the area of education and training, it seems that we're only requiring the applicant to have a GED or a CHSPE certificate, and an Associate of Arts degree is desirable, but certainly not required. Is that sufficient for someone only with that limited educational background? I understand there's a 4-year employment experience that is also part of the requirement, but I wonder if in light of the previously articulated requirements such as resolving interpersonal conflicts and things of that nature, if someone with perhaps a college degree would be best suited for that position. Your thoughts, if you would.
Commissioner Gazarian, those are very, very good questions. I agree. This is a very important position, and the whole list of knowledge, skills, and abilities is quite abundant at this point. And the answer to your question is, would we prefer a more vigorous educational level for this position? Probably, and I would say in the future we may go that way. But what is of greater importance to us at this point is continuing on the existing program or the existing set of responsibilities that we have with the remaining one person that we have working in that capacity. That individual does not have the bachelor's degree, but is absolutely working towards that and has an understanding that the expectation is that she will continue on in try and get some formal education to go along with all of the vast amount of experience, office experience, the medical front office and back office experience that the individual has. If we were starting this from scratch and probably making this an open recruitment, we might very well have required the associate degree or even a bachelor's degree. But again, this is an operation that's experienced a great deal of I would say disappointment. Again, it was a 6-member department only 2 years ago. We unfortunately had to lay people off. We had to displace people and put them in other assignments. I want to do my best to take. I'd say we have a very talented person internally who doesn't happen to have the formal education relative to either the bachelor's degree, but I believe that individual fully capable of doing this job, just as an exceptional person. So that's more or less the emphasis of this is more upon the actual hands-on knowledge and experience. And my hope is that the formal education will come in due time.
Very well, thank you.
Any other questions? I do have a couple of quick ones. Where you mentioned that the change resulted in the layoff of 3 of the 5 people. Did those 3 people actually get laid off, or did you transfer them to other functions in your department?
We actually had 6 people. There were 5 salaried and 1 part-time. The part-time employee was laid off. One of the nurses was laid off, and one of the other nurses retired. He was of the retirement age, and one individual we were able to absorb in another part of the Human Resources Department. That individual works in the benefits area, so there was a nice little nexus there between health services and benefits. And again, the remaining 2, the administrator and this senior clerical position, kept running the program through its transition.
Okay. The other question was, generally these class specs are precursors to exam bulletins. Do you intend to give an exam for this position, knowing that you do have somebody already in line to take the position? How does that work through the civil service procedure?
Sir, even in this circumstance, when we are filling this internally, we will in fact have a process. I think the Commission is aware that we don't have an automatic, promotional process. that can be done without the need for a bulletin being posted and an exam being administered. So what we'll do, assuming Commission approves this specification as written, is we will prepare a promotional job bulletin and post it within the organization, and anyone who happens to meet these qualifications may apply. It is somewhat limited. There aren't a lot of people in the organization with a background in working in an occupational health environment, but nevertheless, we will post a bulletin for this and accept applications.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions? We have a motion.
Move.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Any objections? Have unanimous consent? Next item, please.
Job bulletin for approval, librarian, children's services.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item before you is a request for an open recruitment for the position of librarian in the children's services area. Just as a little bit of a background, the Commission, you all know that we don't bring every bulletin to the Commission for approval. Under the rules, there are basically three circumstances where the Commission is presented with job bulletins for approval. One would be when we have an executive recruitment to conduct. The second instance would be when we have a safety promotional. That would be a police or fire promotional examination, such as a fire engineer, police captain, police sergeant, something along those lines. And the third instance, when we bring bulletins before the Commission, would be when we have a position that was previously recruited for on a promotional basis, and if we're changing that from a promotional exam, which is restricted just to our in-house employees, to an open exam where we present it out to anyone outside the organization, we run these by the Commission for your approval. In this situation, we have this opening for a librarian in the children's services area. We don't believe that we have the sufficient internal candidates and choices internally in order to fill this position at this time. The staff report does indicate that a recruitment was conducted in 2011, a promotional recruitment. 3 individuals were successful in making onto the list. They've made 2 appointments off of that list, and they have 1 remaining name on the list. The library department has approached us, and they would like the opportunity to throw this out as an open examination and not only consider that 1 name internally, but also to consider the people from the outside the organization. You all know, I think, that the city operates under the Rule of 3, where the appointing authority is provided with a choice of 3 names anytime they have consideration for filling an opening. Appointing authority can insist upon receiving 3 names if they so request, and that's more or less what the basis is for this request. Right now, there is a list, there's 1 name on it, but they're seeking additional options. So.
Let me ask a question. Perhaps I'm confused. It seems as though there was a list of 3 individuals in July of 2011.
That's correct.
And 2 of those were promoted according to this memorandum. So why then not consider the 3-person list as a viable list, and the 2 have filled vacancies, and the 3rd one, who apparently qualified as one of the 3, fill now the next opening vacancy, as opposed to essentially nullifying his or her having qualified for that position and opening it up for an open recruitment. I'm just concerned that if this was initially an internal promotional process, why change it into an external open recruitment process rather than allow one of our own to promote if he or she qualified already?
Commissioner Gazarian, that's a good question. Again, the rule of 3 is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing that it does provide the appointing authority with options, and there will be times when we have individuals who who make it onto a list, and they may have done very well in the examination process. Maybe they gave a great interview, or maybe they're good test takers, whatever the case may be. But there may be some, and I'm not saying that's the case here, but there may be some fatal flaw or concern with actually appointing this person to a job. Hence, the rule of three provides the appointing authority with other options, two other options. And I think, I'm not sure, we can get into any details as to why, the remaining name is not sufficient for the library department. But again, this is about providing them with for each opening, three viable options. You're correct. Initially, when the list was established, they had three viable options. They selected one individual, and then they came back, selected another, and now they're seeking the opportunity for those full three choices.
At the risk of opening a can of worms, I must say that when there were three names selected, and I don't know anything about this matter, I take it as a hypothetical. When there were three names selected and one of those three was promoted, I assumed there were two left, and that was sufficient to then promote one of the two. And it was not a rule of three being adhered to, I suppose. I may be mistaken. It just seems to me that when we have three viable candidates internally and two have promoted, obviously the two apparently were better suited than the third, and now the third, who's going to be back into an open pool, probably will be facing new people coming in, they get promoted, and this civil service employee never gets promoted.
Well, Commissioner Gazarian, let me again address that. Again, the intent of the rule of three is to provide three options for each opening. So, correct. The first appointment that was made, there were three viable options. The second time, there were just two left. You'll see occasionally we'll create a list, and there might only be one name on the list. And if the appointing authority says this is not sufficient, I would like three names to choose from, that's our obligation then to either go back to the drawing board, start over again, or supplement that list with additional means of getting additional names. And that could be going back, doing another promotional exam, or it could mean going open. And I think what they're seeking here is the ability. I mean, there are a lot of people in the library field looking for work. I believe LA County, LA City have both have layoffs, and there are some good people. Actually, children's librarians, as I understand, are pretty hard to find as well. A lot of people who go to library school these days are focusing more on the research end, and frankly, they may not want to deal with kids. If they wanted to do that, they'd become teachers. But anyway, I think it's an opportunity for the city to seek some additional options. And what's going to happen with this individual who's on the list is that they will stay on this list under our rules and under the city charter. An individual who makes it onto a promotional list stays on the list for 2 years.
I see.
So, and as per the rules, the promotional exam, the promotional list has to be considered before any open list. So this individual is essentially the first choice on the list. If we do an open recruitment and get additional names underneath, we'll have additional maybe 4 or 5 other people. And the rule of three then becomes this first individual who's a promotional candidate. That's the first person to be considered. And then the next two would be the two names that are supplemented on the open list.
So it's his or her position to lose.
Yes.
I suppose.
Yes.
Well, in light of the fact that it's a position for children's services, and it appears that the exercise will, in effect, ensure the best qualified candidate to serve the needs of children in the library, I will support this request.
Okay. This is Alex Soto from my staff.
Oh, yes.
He stood there patiently, and
Good evening.
he may have something to add.
Chair Devine, members of the Commission, Alex Soto, Human Resources Associate. Wanted to add some background. It actually turns out the individual who remains on the list during the initial round of hiring interviews, chose to waive her right to compete in that process.
Oh.
So this person went through the initial oral panel, made it to the list, and at that point chose not to compete. They will be offered the opportunity to compete again. They may or may not take us up on that, but I thought that would be worth noting.
That's instructive. Thank you.
Mr. Gaddis.
So let me make sure, we're basically going to create another list, an open list, and keep the promotional list, so the appointing authority will now have 4 names.
No,
3 off the open list and 1 off the promotional list?
Now, Commissioner Gantis, it's still 3 names.
So there will be 2 on the open list and 1 on the promotional?
Correct. As per the rules, consideration for promotional lists always come before open lists. So in this scenario, this individual will always be essentially number 1 on this list. And I'm really glad Alex clarified that this individual had waived. I was unaware. Are they currently waiving, or do we not know? Okay. So they may come and say, hey, I'm interested, or they may say, no, I'm still not interested. So, but it would be 1 promotional candidate plus 2 open.
And the appointing authority can choose any of the 3?
Any of those 3, yes, sir.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Move.
Have a motion to move. Second? Okay, any objections? We have unanimous consent. Next item, please.
Report on advertising budget expenditures, October 2011 to December 2011.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is your quarterly advertising expenditure report. This is an item that the Commission has traditionally asked us to provide on a quarterly basis. We have a dwindling budget for advertising, but started out this year at $40,300, and what we do is provide for you on a quarterly basis our expenditures, just so you get a sense of where we're spending our advertising dollars. I've said it many times, advertising costs have gotten to be very reasonable with the advent of various websites and internet advertising. In the old days, it was quite costly. We were mainly doing our advertising in newspapers, magazines, publications, which the print ads tended to be somewhat expensive. The internet stuff tends to be relatively inexpensive. So we've done a fairly good job staying within our budget over the past few years. This report happens to show that in the last quarter, and I'm talking about from October 1, 2011 through December 31st, 2011, we've expended only $4,700, $47,2195, which is, again, a relatively small amount. The report has an attachment where the various types of advertisements are broken down into 3 types. Type A are publications, websites, newsletters that target ethnic communities. Type B are those specialized trade journals that focus on specific occupations, whether it be the power industry or the water industry or payroll or law enforcement, whatever the case may be. And then type C on the back is are those just sort of the generic publications, whether it be websites or newspapers. You see some Glendale News Press, and occasionally we'll run ads in the LA Times and that sort of thing. Once again, the amount expended in this quarter was $4,700. The amount is spent in the first 2 quarters of the year, basically the first 6 months, is just over $9,000. So we've spent maybe a quarter of the budget in through 6 months of this year. Also, in this report, we always like to sort of highlight the various outreach that we do as staff. We don't simply run ads and put our notices on websites, but we do try to get out occasionally and interact with the community at various job fairs. And we were participating in the Unity Fest event that occurred in October. We had a little booth set up there. We also participated in the Small Business Assistance Career Opportunity Fair, which was presented by Congressman Schiff. In fact, a couple members of our staff have a nice photograph with the congressman. And on October 26th, we participated, as we always do, with the Glendale Unified School District's College and Career Fair held at the Civic Auditorium. So those are just some of the things that the staff has been doing in order to ensure our outreach. And again, if you have questions on that or our advertising budget, be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions?
I don't know if this is the right time. There's something in the packet that I received for today, but that's about past due employee.
That's next on the agenda.
That's the last.
Yeah. Except to say 6 months and quarter of the budget expended. I wish somebody was running my business in that fashion.
Okay. We'll go to the next item.
Agenda forecast.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is your agenda forecast. We had anticipated bringing back the report Commissioner Gazarian requested on administrative leave for our next meeting, February the 8th. We also were planning to have the start of a hearing, and again, I'm not going to name names of the employee involved, but we've been informed by that employee's legal counsel that they're not going to be available on February the 8th, and he is requesting that be pushed to the second meeting in February, which would be the 22nd. So it looks like we won't have that particular item on the 8th, but we will be prepared for that report on administrative leave. And as you know, the Commission has a full workload of hearings, some open, most closed, and good luck with that.
Mr. Ganesh, you had indicated you're going to be absent one of these
I
meetings.
will be absent now for 2 of the meetings.
Yay!
I am pleased to announce that I will not be here on the 22nd of February. That's semi-pleasing, but Mr. Gazarian will be excited to know that I won't be here on April 25th if we do have a meeting, because I will be taking my very first trip to Lebanon to visit the homeland of my grandparents' birth. Never gone, and my son and daughter-in-law invited me to go with them.
Very
Happy
good.
trails.
Okay, very good.
And Mr. Chair, that works well. We have April 25th, we have a hearing scheduled on that day, as well as on May 23rd. So we sort of peg that as 2 potential dates where we may cancel the regularly scheduled meeting, unless something truly urgent comes up.
We can't have meetings anyway without Mr. Gaddis here, so I think we just need to cancel it, right?
Can we take a vote on that?
Maybe we need to go with Mr. Ganesh to where he's going.
Let's see if he gets back from Lebanon.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the agenda forecast? Seeing none, we'll ask for the next item, please.
Reports and information, past due employee performance evaluations.
And I'm going to ask Mr. Gaddis, who's the expert in evaluating these, to tell us about
I am
it.
a semi-expert. I took over from Mr. Coleman, and I always do this in his memory. We miss Roy Coleman. The people with no past dues are the city clerk's office, city manager's office, the city treasurer's office, the fire department, Glendale Water and Power, the library, the police department. Out of 1,700 salaried employees, we have a total of 28 past due notices, one of which is a third, I note, Mr. Doyle. Did we ask, we did have somebody here from community development, do we not? I think I see, she's not here on that one.
Ms.
You can come up if you like, Ms. Stotler.
Oh, Ms. Stotler is active in the GMA, and she along with Mr. Hinckley. But we did notify, albeit probably late, about the department with the third notice, and I'm not sure why they're not here. But we will we will.
Could we
make
be
contact
sure
with
that
them.
the head of the Community Development Department is aware of the fact that we take these
He's certainly aware of it.
very seriously, and as you know, Mr. Doyle, it's one of our central issues now in one of our hearings is these past dues. So we have to elevate this a little higher. So
Mr. Gantis, we've been told that this evaluation has been served, but the department should be here. So I'm not sure why they're not. So.
It seems that it's, forgive me, out of 1,728, we only have 28 that are past due?
You know, Mr. Gazarian, you're absolutely correct. It's good. However, but it's still not as good as we've had in the past. This, if I may, Mr. Chairman, this commission, at the behest of Mr. Abkarian and Roy Coleman, the late Roy Coleman, were very serious about that. We were getting big percentages of bad. Everybody was, so we worked very hard on this policy, and I applaud their efforts. It was at their behest. And now we are actually in a hearing where it's become a central issue, that's one, you know, and we've always said, and as you know, I've been on this a long time, and this is really the first hearing where it's really been that important. We have always thought it could be, and now it is. So we have to be a little bit more, we've kind of not been as, I mean, they've been very good. You're absolutely correct. This is much better than it was, but not as good as it's been. And so we have to be much more diligent, and when there's one missing, we have to make sure that the department heads understand the importance of these. If in fact we have to go through a disciplinary hearing because we hear these, we hear you didn't tell me there was something wrong, stuff like that. So,
if I may ask, what is the? I see that in all of these different departments it says, for example, 1 special circumstances evaluation, 6 special circumstances, 2 special. What does that mean?
Well, Mr. Doyle, I'm going to let you answer this.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gazarian, excellent question. The special circumstances evaluation typically fall into 2 categories. One, either the individual is out on some form of medical leave, whether it be a long-term illness or workers' compensation case where they simply aren't here to be served with their evaluation, or 2, the individual is either under investigation or facing some form of discipline that hasn't been completely resolved yet. I'm really glad you asked because I do get lots of requests from various departments. Hey, I wasn't able to get to this person's evaluation. Can I go on special circumstances? And the threshold for being put in special circumstances category is very high, and we don't just allow that to occur haphazardly. So those are really the circumstances where those would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow that up, because I have noticed, I think, Matt, there's a little bit of slippage. We're getting to 3rd notices, a few more 2nd notices. If I'm not mistaken, we had sent out 4 or 5 years ago letters to all the department heads saying how seriously we took these and that we needed to reduce 2nd notices as well. Is my memory faulty or correct?
Mr. Gantis, yeah, I think so. Over the years, this has been an ongoing concern. There have been ongoing communications from you through me to the department heads, to the various departments, and we've seen times where the compliance is really outstanding, and then we've seen some slippage. I think it's sort of hit and miss. All I can say, for the past few years is, we've had so many, budgetary cutbacks, positions, not being filled. Every supervisor, every manager preparing these types of evaluations is simply seeing a larger workload and a great deal more pressure on budgetary matters and things like that. So there's only so much time in the day, and there's only so many hours one can put in one's day, and it's no excuse because this is important. It's it's a priority for our department, the commission, and city manager's office, but things are getting more and more challenging in our organization, and sometimes things do fall by the wayside when things get just way too busy and way too hectic. Right now, you all know, I'm sure you've all been following the issues relating to redevelopment and the potential dissolution of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency and the entire department in this organization. This has been the subject of a great number of meetings and great angst over the past few weeks since the Supreme Court decision came down a few weeks ago. In those circumstances, our priorities have to shift to really the survival of the agency, of jobs, and things get reprioritized. And again, when you're under that kind of pressure, things like evaluations do unfortunately fall by the wayside, and it is I think somewhat telling that the 1/3 notice is from the Community Development Department, which is the department that would be affected the most by the potential dissolution of redevelopment. So there's a lot going on and a lot of things on people's minds these days. But I will again, spread the message that again, this is a priority of the Commission and something we take very, very seriously, and I will continue to convey that message to our departments.
Mr. Chairman, one of the reasons I brought that up is we have a new city manager, and he may not quite have that in his radar, and maybe however you bring it up, if it's at the exec meeting or whatever, that he understands that we have a high priority, and the reason why. I'm sure he does, but I think reiterating it to the new city manager probably would not hurt. So if that could be done, I don't know if the rest of the commissioners agree.
He does, as a matter of fact, he does place a very high priority on performance evaluations. We've had that discussion unsolicited by me. He's a big believer in that, and the people that report to him, I'm certain, will be getting regular performance evaluations in a timely fashion. So.
Okay, I think we've looked at that very thoroughly, and we're ready to move on to the next item.
Civil Service Commission and our staff comments.
Do we have any comments from the commissioners?
I will. Yes, I very briefly want to thank the fire department for the city of Glendale. When I joined this commission and this body, it was December 14, and that evening I came here, and some of you do recall perhaps that morning my father had suffered a stroke, and as I rushed over to my parents' home, I was really quite taken aback by the care and the personal attention given to not only my father, who was not in a good shape at all, but also my mother. They're both very elderly, and thereafter in the hospital and the follow-up. And I just have to say that I had never had an encounter with any fire department personnel of any city, but having had that encounter, it was very comforting. They were superb, professional, despite the fact that my parents didn't appear to be very cooperative. It was just an experience that I will cherish, and I want to publicly acknowledge the wonderful work that obviously the fire department in this city does, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manoukian.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I think both our police department and our fire department, we take them for granted. The fine work that these guys do day in, day out, especially when an incident like that happens, you get to experience it firsthand. It's just phenomenal. Absolutely, I agree with you. We're just absolutely blessed with both our fire and our police department, both of them. They're just phenomenal guys.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Gregorian?
I cannot sit down and not to praise any of the employees. We have so many departments, GWP, Human Services, City Manager, every department, they are doing such a good job.
City Attorney?
Yeah, City Attorney, of course.
Especially.
So, I don't want any...
Especially.
Especially. So I don't want to create any misunderstanding that we are proud of our 1,800 people who work in City of Glendale. And on behalf of, I would like to say, behalf of community, would like to say thank you, a big thank you to every one of you.
I knew Mr. Ganis would have a...
I wasn't until he mentioned this, because I think, Mr. Doyle, am I correct, tomorrow, one member of the HR staff is getting a 5-year, 10-year, I didn't see how many years. How long is that?
10.
10 years? Is this some young gentleman that I continually razz because of his attire? Look at him in a black coat today and a beautiful tie. Steve Narcissian, we're very blessed, especially in HR. We have some wonderful employees, and I always razz Steve and give him a lot of grief, but he's one of these young and upcoming, a lot of them in the HR. Manya, I've forgotten your name. Narine? Narine, excuse me. Amy, of course, has been here, and Alex. These are people that are...
Manya,
I already said Manya. I didn't miss Manya. Manya was first. Manya, did you want to come up and talk? Well, I guess you didn't want to come up and talk. Anyway, we're very fortunate to have them as well.
Easy on John because he's leaving for Lebanon, so...
Okay, with that, we're going to go into closed session at this time. We will be reporting out and adjourning the commission meeting at that time. It will not be televised, however.
Thank you.
So at that point, we will adjourn to closed
You're
session.
not having your own voice? Okay.